speakers. We are starting with a welcome to country with Miss Annette.
Every time as Indigenous people we want to achieve something or take one step forward that's taken us 250 years, we turn to you Greens and you really help us out, so I'd like to say thank you. And it's never ever too much of a hassle to cruise down to do anything for you, because you are the only people who really care about us. And the other most important issue about this is the first group of women in the Senate. My godfather. As of you all out there, how sick are we of that bloody little white boys club, eh? We're so pissed off with them.
Why are we here? Why are we here? Because we walk taller when we're together. Because we know that real action on climate change doesn't involve gas, ALP. We know that we are stronger as a nation, as a community, as a society when we build other people up, not lock them out. We know that, oh, that's right guys, there's been more of this, I tell you. And we believe that a fairer, cleaner, more equal society, nation, globe is possible, is within our grasp, and is so necessary.
And I say that I'm so grateful and thankful to be amongst so many Green friends and supporters from the bottom of my heart, because I really mean it, because I've just come back from spending a few days on the Stop Adani convoy that is weaving its way up to the Galilee Basin to do everything we possibly can to stop that disastrous Adani mine. And can I tell you, those people on that convoy, some of the most courageous environmental warriors that you've ever met, are doing their work up there, but they need every single one of you. Every single one of you that is knocking on doors, making those phone calls, raising those donations, because they need, for the next 3 weeks, for us to do everything we possibly can, come May 18th, to elect enough Greens in the next federal parliament to stop that disastrous Adani mine from going ahead once and for all. And having been immersed in what's happened and how we've got to this point where we are contemplating opening up the Galilee Basin to be one of the biggest coal mines in this world at a time that we need to keep fossil fuels in the ground, represents the very worst of our politics. The backroom deals, the secret handshakes, the pats on the back, the favours for mates. That's how you get to have such a disastrous project on the table of a federal parliament. And to me, that represents the very essence of the politics that the Greens are trying to change. It's the reason that the Greens are more important than ever. Not only do we bring new things to the table, we change the way politics is done in this country. And we need our boardrooms, our organisations, our parliaments to reflect the true diversity that our community has within it. It needs more women in our parliaments. We need more of the diversity in our community reflected in those key boardrooms and corporations and in every walk of life if we are to stop the disaster of climate change wrecking our planet and pushing our people into peril. I've been very lucky in my working life as a social worker to be in organisations when I've experienced mostly a female majority in the people that I've worked with. But that all changed when I entered politics. I've had senior executives try to talk down a complex concept because they thought it was too difficult for me to understand. I've seen that Victorian State Parliament descend into what we think felt like a locker room because all the women suddenly had left the room. And I know that Janet will tell you more about the things that she's had to push and change in areas where women's voices are needed more and more. And just look at the incredible things she's achieved to date. Axing the tampon tax, championing marriage equality, and being an unyielding force about the need to care for our climate and environment. She's taken up the fight in transport, and I'm sure she'll tell you a little bit more about the experience of championing those issues. And if I can hazard a guess, I'm sure it hasn't been easy. The Greens just don't talk about needing more women and more diversity in our political representatives. We walk the talk. We consistently have over 50% of our female representatives in our teams of MPs. We helped elect the first Aboriginal woman to the Victorian Parliament, We helped elect the first Vietnamese Australian to the Victorian Parliament. We had the first Tamil Sri Lankan woman to the Victorian Parliament, and that's because of the Greens. And last year we achieved the highest representation of any group of MPs anywhere in this country with the Victorian MPs team of 87%. So what I say is don't listen to the media, that when other parties don't want to take us on policy, the media just write their lines and they try to attack us when they've got nothing left in the bank. And that's because we're coming to change the politics of this country, to change those backroom deals that allow the environmental catastrophe that we have before us to be threatening the future of people on this planet and our beautiful ecosystems and our environment. And that's why we need the Greens more than ever in this Parliament. And I'm no more sure of that right now, having come back from Queensland, when people are doing everything they possibly can to save our people and our planet. The 6 women who are standing for the Victorian Senate team, we're too much in Victorian politics, Hung and I, represent to me the very best of our politics. Courage and compassion to take on the type of bravado and ego that has dominated our politics for too long. Let's get Janet elected again. Let's get Absara elected. Let's get Claire elected. Let's get that full team elected. Thank you to each and every one of you for everything that you're doing. I know it's blood, sweat and tears at this point in the campaign, but what you're doing is changing the world as we know it. Thanks, everyone.
We have a wonderful volunteer who's also third on the Senate ticket, Claire Proctor, who's going to join us on the stage and give us an insight into what it's like on the ground. But before we do that, we might play the video.
I was still coming to terms with realising that I was transgender, and I decided I need to go out there and meet people that I knew would agree with who I am, would appreciate and support that, and the Greens were very outwardly that. I've been volunteering with the Greens for approaching 3 years now because it helps make the world a better place in the way that you know that you want it to be. It's not going to get there by itself. You kind of need to help give it that push.
So, hi everyone. Also, hello to everyone that I am friends with, one of which is waving right now, that I haven't said hello to yet. And I just want to acknowledge very slightly how weird it is that for once Steph Hodgins-May is at one of my events. But I do want to point out, as well as being part of the first all-women Senate ticket for the Greens, I am the first openly transgender candidate the Victorian Greens have ever run. And as far as we know, I'm only the second transgender candidate in all of Victorian politics. The first trans candidate last ran in 1998. So that is 21 years since a trans or gender diverse voice has been anywhere near being in a position to directly influence policy in this state. From being in the running to get a seat at the table that actually legislates for them. I think 21 years is far too long to wait for something like this, when there are people in Parliament who don't even believe that people like me exist, and yet there's nobody up there that looks like me to stand in front of them, prove them wrong, and then to do a better job. So I've decided to stand up and be what I wanted to see. Our Parliament really needs an injection of diversity to make it look more like the public that actually elected them. But But we're not going to be able to do that by ourselves. The six of us can't make them do it just by ourselves. And that's where all of you can come in. We would love so much to talk to as much of Victoria as possible to convince them to vote Green. There's only so much ground that 6 people can cover. There's 3 weeks left. We really need your help. There is probably a lot of you that haven't done any campaigning before or haven't done enough to be confident about it. That's okay, because I knew my first few times volunteering were terrifying. My first events were actually before I started transitioning, as well as before I learned how to talk to strangers about really any subject whatsoever. But it got better really quickly. There's no better way to reduce that fear than just going out there and finding the strongest part of it for you. This close to the election, we need all the help we can get. And you're not alone, because we've been doing this for ages, and we still do. For the past few months, we've all been campaigning as hard as we can, and we're not stopping until the actual election day. Every week, I've been on the phones talking to voters. Apsara has been door knocking, and you can attest from hearing her how amazing she must be at that, talking to people face to face at their homes. You're getting into the final stretch. We really need you. We are all on the booths at polling day, and we want you to be too. Starting on Monday, early voting is opening, and we need as many people as possible there too. Judy, who very in the nick of time joined us on stage, has been involved in pre-polling in her area. There are so many more across the state, and it is becoming more and more important as more people decide to vote early. We need people to be there to talk to them right as they're casting their votes, because so many people decide on the day. I still don't understand them. We'll be right next to you for all of this, and we need people from all across the state to give us a hand. So I've only got one question. Will you stand and help us? Yeah! Awesome! Fantastic.
She is here as the second on the Senate ticket, and without further ado, I would like to introduce Ms. Apsara. Come on up.
Oh my God! I can see some friends of mine. Oh, it's so exciting. And you know, all I can see is a sea of faces. I think I've got such a loud voice. I've got to be very careful. So it's so exciting. First of all, I'd love to say thank you to all of you for coming here tonight. It's fabulous. But thank you to Janet and your amazing team for putting this together. Yes. You've done a great job in getting us all here tonight. So it's fabulous. So before I get started, I'd like to make an acknowledgement. I'd like to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nations, who are the traditional owners of the land that we stand on. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. And I also would like to please acknowledge any of our First Nations brothers and sisters who are here in the room with us tonight. I hope you feel welcome on the land. This is your land, on your land. So before we get started, I was going to talk a little bit about myself and introduce myself to you and talk a little bit about why I'm standing here tonight. And why I'm standing with this fabulous group of women. It is so incredible. We are so diverse, and that is what makes us amazing. So to start off with, I'm Sri Lankan Tamil, and my family were able to leave Sri Lanka in 1977 before the war broke out. And I grew up in Africa before I came out to Australia. When we came to, up until 2013, I really didn't get involved in politics. I was really not that interested in politics, and I was not very engaged. But Tony Abbott was coming to power, and that was a very frightening time. Can I ask here, how many of you got involved when Tony Abbott came to power? Yes! Okay, so, you know, there are always these periods in time. You know, Tampa was a period in time when a lot of people got involved. Tony Abbott is one of those periods in time when we all got involved. And when you think about it, what Tony Abbott did for most of us who, you know, were feeling so disempowered was he made us realise, and this is something that we must all think about, is 40 years of neoliberalism. He is a product of 40 years of neoliberalism, okay? And it was a very frightening prospect. I felt so disempowered, and I felt like, what can I do to make these changes? This is something that I need to do. I can't be sitting on the sidelines and pretending that everything's okay, because everything was not okay. So I want you, when you go away tonight, this is one of the takeaways I'd like you to take away with you tonight, is you cannot create change unless you challenge the system. This system is not built for us. It is not built for women. It is not built for many of us in minority communities. And it is very important for us to understand that we need to actually be shaking the system, and we need to be bringing the system down. This is why I'm so excited about supporting Janet. Janet is an amazing woman, okay? I look up to her. She's an activist. She's been an activist for 25 years. So she's a founding member of the Victorian Greens. And really, at the end of the day, she has stood by her values for all this time. She understands that politics is a long game. It's not something that we can change immediately, and we all have to recognise we have to be in it to make it actually happen. So it's very important for us to acknowledge the amazing work that Janet has done over so many years. Janet? But I also want to say I am so happy and so lucky to be standing with 5 other fabulous women. It is absolutely a privilege to be standing with you. Where are you, my gorgeous friends? Yes. All right. I also want to talk a little bit about white privilege. I have a massive issue with white privilege. I have lots of issues, but that's one I have a lot of issue with. Okay, we have to recognise that middle-aged white men are a very small percentage of our population, yet they are overrepresented in our parliament, and they're overrepresented in every single one of our institutions, and this has to change. So really, at the end of the day, the 6 women, we are shaking patriarchy. It's really important for us to recognise that we are, and once you see the 6 of us, you will realise we're all from different minority backgrounds, is the fact that only when we are there working together can we actually effect the change that we would like to see. So it's very important for us to recognise that this change cannot happen unless we are in it together and we're working together. And the thing is that we have to remember these white men want us divided. So we need to always come together and we need to work together. It's very important for us to remember that. We should never allow them. We should never allow them to divide us. That is something that we should always be fighting against.
And please let me now welcome the woman of the hour, our mate from the West, Senator Janet Rice.
Thank you, Hung. Thank you, Apsara, for that amazing speech. And thank you all for being here. What an incredible room of incredible people. It's just looking out and just seeing people from all over my life. It's just amazing. I also, of course, want to start by acknowledging that we are here tonight on the land of the Wurundjeri people, of the Kulin Nation, and to acknowledge that the land that we are on was stolen. And to acknowledge that we've got to tell the truth. We've got to acknowledge the massacres, the dispossession that went on when First Nations lands were stolen, but also to acknowledge the survival, the resilience, the determination of those First Nations people and the continuation of their culture, and to commit ourselves to be working with them, to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, so they need sovereignty over their own land. And any First Nations people in the room with us today, I pledge to you that the Greens are going to work with you until you get sovereignty back over your land. And we will work for treaties. We will sit down and we will work together and we will achieve treaties with our First Nations people. and achieve justice for our First Nations people. I mean, imagine that. Imagine a world where our First Nations people have justice. What a world that would be. I mean, I spend a lot of time thinking about the future, imagining a future, imagining a better world. And I know that it's possible to achieve that. I know that we can get to a better world. That's why I've committed myself to the Greens for the last 26 years. One of my favourite quotes is from Arundhati Roy, and it's, "Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. And on a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." That's the world that we are working towards. My politics, Green politics, your politics is the hope of achieving that better world. It's the hope of idealism. It's a world, it's a politics where we dare to think big, that we've got big plans, big, bold, nation-building, world-changing plans, that we can get there. It is the politics of hope. I mean, I imagine a world where nature is valued and protected for its own sake. Because it's life. That's not abused and destroyed for the profits of big corporations. I imagine a world where ordinary people have got what they need to live a good life. That they are treated equally and that they've got the same opportunities, no matter who they are, where they live, how much they earn, who their parents are, and that they have got what's needed to live happy, healthy lives. A home, affordable health care, a welfare system that doesn't leave people in poverty, free education. We can do all of this. And I imagine a future where we stand with our First Nations people and where people of colour, people with disabilities, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, gender diverse, intersex and queer people are equal and are celebrated. I imagine a peaceful future, a world at peace. I mean, it seems impossible, but we can do it. When people work together, that's what we can achieve. And I imagine a world where the climate emergency is over. Where coal and gas and oil are fossils of the past. And where people can be positive and optimistic and to feel confident about going into a future living on a healthy and thriving planet. This is all possible. This is what the Greens are working for. This could be our future. I mean, we have come a long way. We have achieved remarkable success since I was one of the founders of the Greens 26 years ago. And it's all of you in this room that have helped us get there. I mean, in the 5 years that I've been in the Parliament, it's been under the Abbott-Turnbull-Morrison government. Fossil fools, and we need to kick them out as quickly as possible. But even under that backwards Neanderthal, last century government, we've actually achieved some amazing things. We achieved marriage equality. Marriage equality would not have been achieved without the Greens being there. We axed the tampon tax. And we led the way. We led the way in in getting royal commissions under the way. The Royal Commission into Banking, and at the end of last year, the incredible work that Senator Jordan Steele-John did to get the Royal Commission into people with disabilities. This is what you achieve by having Greens in the Parliament. Plus, then there are the achievements like the Medivac Bill that we in the Independents got through the House of Representatives at the end of last year. That even though the government's gone out of its way to try and sort of stymie what that was trying to achieve, at the very least it just kept the spotlight on the cruel policies of the Labor and Liberal Party and their race to the bottom on refugees. And it kept the spotlight and said, fair-minded, decent Australians will not put up with this torture any longer. Those people, the refugees on Manus Island and Nauru and people in detention here in Australia must be allowed to live free and good lives as citizens here of Australia. And the other thing we did is that we kept the spotlight and we kept climate. We have kept, for the last 5 years, we have kept climate and nature on the agenda. We have not let Labor and Liberal forget them, despite the fact they don't want to talk about climate. They don't want to talk about the environment. But we have made them talk about it through our 5 years in government. And then, of course, there was what we achieved by having Greens in the Parliament under the previous Gillard government. World-leading climate legislation, and a special call out to Adam Bant, where was he? Was just there before. There he is, for his role in that Parliament as the sole Green in the House of Representatives. But it was because of the work of our Greens and the leadership of Christine Milne during that Gillard government negotiations that we got the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, the Australian Renewable Energy Authority, and of course we got a price on carbon. And from the very day that price on carbon was introduced until Tony Abbott so stupidly got rid of it, it sent our carbon pollution plummeting downwards. That's what you can achieve by having Greens in the Parliament. And on top of this, and in fact because of these sorts of achievements, we have given people hope. We have given people the sense, the knowledge, the belief that change is possible, that if we work together as a community that we can achieve change, that you don't need to be cynical, that you can remain optimistic, you can remain hopeful, that we can be working together. We have let people know that even that we can be resilient, even when times are tough and it looks like we're not getting anywhere, that by continuing to grow, continuing to work together, we can be headed towards that future that we need. So I have such hope when I look back and when I think what we have achieved in the 26 years of the Greens, where we have come from, how much we have grown, how much power we have actually had, and how we've been able to share that power with the community, and that we have wielded that power for the benefit of all people and for all of nature. It gives me great hope. I mean, we've got such a long way. We have come such a long way. We need to acknowledge that. Yes, we've still got a long way to go, but we should celebrate how far we've come. So I am incredibly proud, so proud to be leading this Senate team of the most amazing, diverse, committed, wonderful women. So I'm going to invite them to all join me on the stage. So get ready to see this team. We have Apsara, a teacher and a woman of colour. Hey. We have Claire, who is a young trans woman. We have Nikita, a student. And we have Alice. And have we got Judy? Judy's running late. Almost got Judy. We've got Alice and Judy from regional Victoria. And for me, I'm a proud bisexual, a climate scientist, and supported by my amazing rainbow family. Penny, you can come and... No, that's all right. I mean, we are the people who have been historically locked out of politics, but not anymore. We are the history of the Greens and we are the future of the Greens. Our time has come. So Greens women are a force to be reckoned with. But in order to get me re-elected, and wouldn't it be amazing to get Apsara elected as well, we need your help. So, are you with us? All right, let's get this done. Thank you, everyone. Oh, Judy! Come on this side, Judy. The first all-women Green Senate team. Woo!
I'm very, very proud of the amazing women we have in the Greens who are all running for the Senate. We've got such a fantastic, diverse team there. We have to re-elect Janet because she's been a fantastic senator for us. I would be beside myself with joy if we could elect Apsara as well. She's number 2 on the ticket. She's from the Multicultural Greens and she is just an amazing, hard-working woman with courage, compassion, and she is like a stalwart for me of what the Greens are all about. So I would so love to see her get up and have a second Greens woman in the Victorian, representing us for Victoria in the Senate. But yeah.
I found that all the other parties are too much involved in doing what the big corporations want. The Greens are the only party that I believe that are really for the people and for the environment, for the planet, for nature. I'm a big refugee activist and I have been for nearly 20 years, and the Greens, I totally support the Greens policies on refugees who I believe should be welcomed into our country and not put in inhumane and torturous situations in detention.
This is an election which is more than anything else about the environment, and it's about global warming. It's a climate change election. We have the Liberal Party having signed off on Adani just before the election was called. We have Labor sitting on the fence, wanting to have a Bob each way, when we know that Adani will create something like 1,400 jobs at most, and then it'll take jobs from other sectors. But once the Galilee Basin gets underway, it will double Australia's coal exports. We're already the biggest coal exporter in the world. Once that happens, there's no stopping global warming. We cannot have a barrier reef and have Adani. With that situation facing us, this election is vitally important, and I'm so pleased to be supporting Janet Rice and the other Green Senate candidates here, who've, this has been a great team, and Janet's been doing a fabulous job in the Senate, kicking real goals in relation to not just the climate but human rights, rights for transgender, gay, lesbian, queer, intersex. It's been really good to see her performing and doing so much for the environment. Logging is one of the great things that we're seeing happening here in Victoria, and which Janet's been vocal about. And of course, logging is one of the key features of logging and land clearing is one of the things which is driving climate change as well. So it's been great to be in this enthusiastic environment and to see Janet and the other Greens candidates and many lower house candidates. We've seen Jason Ball, Stephanie Hodgins-May, Adam Bant, all here, David Ristrom, all here vying for lower house seats, and I'm hoping that the Greens will do very well.
I would like to advocate for the trans community, the intersex community, so many other communities that just don't get a voice anywhere near Parliament.
I'm an anti-racism campaigner, and we talk about racism and Islamophobia, but at the end of the day, if we don't tackle the elephant in the room, which is sovereignty for our First Nations people and treaties for our First Nation people and self-determination, we're never going to go anywhere. So for me, that is really a number one priority. We cannot at all address anything going forward unless we can actually sit back and reflect on what we have done and we continue to do over the 2 centuries in Australian colonial history. Coal is a 19th century technology. We're now living in the 21st century. That's the first myth that we need to actually debunk. The second thing that we need to recognize is that the renewable energy does actually create jobs. It is a job creator, and therefore what we really should be investing in is TAFE education, so that people can actually re-skill and be able to transition into renewable jobs.
Oh look, I am so rapt at how well this launch has gone tonight, and so humbled by the amount of support from people, both in their commitment to being here tonight, their commitment to campaigning, all the things they've already done. I mean, some people have been with the Greens since the beginning, some people this is their first event they've been to, and the energy in the room for people who are just really going to pull out all stops to work with the Greens over the coming 3 weeks. And it's so important, so much is at stake. I mean, we're working for a future where we can feel safe about our future, where climate change is properly tackled, where a future where we can shift to 100% renewable energy, get out of coal and gas and oil. We're working for a future where we tackle economic inequality, working for a future where people have got the ability to lead happy, healthy lives by having a home, having affordable healthcare, having a welfare system that doesn't leave them in poverty, free education. That's why all these people are here tonight, to help get me re-elected so that I could continue to work for all of these aims in the Senate, and so that no matter which government is re-elected, that we can be there holding them to account and really pushing forward on all the issues that we know are so important for a future for all of us, a future for all of nature. So it's been such a great night, a great buzz, and I'm really looking forward to an amazing next 3 weeks, and hopefully ending up being re-elected at the end of it.
Let's ask one question. You gave a very impassioned beginning of the speech about Indigenous people. Why was that? That was incredible, really.
Oh, look, I feel so impassioned. I mean, if you think of what happened to the First Nations people of Australia at the time of the invasion, I mean, the dispossession, the massacres, the killings, it was just, awful to think of what happened, and that is it's still not acknowledged in Australian history. So for me, as somebody who's got the privilege of being a senator, it's important to me to be really doing what I can so that we can achieve justice for our First Nations peoples, because until we do that, we are not going to be at peace with ourselves as a nation. So, I mean, the Greens and me personally are really committed to working with our First Nations people until we do have treaties, that we acknowledge sovereignty and we've got justice for our First Nations brothers and sisters.